Jai Hind. Now, are you ready to write an answer of this question? As you seen in the title, that an important question of year 1995 asked in the UPSC Civil Services or IS examination. The question here is, rule of law is better than rule of men. Is that clear? It is stated by Aristotle. So, according to the question, first we have to understand what do you mean by rule of law? What is the basis of rule of law? And the second one is, what do you understand by rule of men? Men in the sense any individual. Is that clear? So, how the rule of law is better than rule of men? How the rule of any individual is not comparable with the rule of law, which means constitution, written law in modern form. The rule book, rule of law and law of the land, or the modern constitution in any democratic nation, how the modern constitution or written law is more effective than rule of men. So in any answer you have to write in this format. First is intro, second is body, and third is conclusion. Is that clear? It is my first Q and answer, the question and answer session. So I would like to give you this structure or the format, that first we start with intro, body and conclusion, and at last you may conclude with some famous quotation of the Aristotle or any other major political thinker or political scientist who is stated related to the content. Is that clear? So I am right now presenting in front of you with some model answer. It is not a perfect or best answer, but I believe that it will give you an example. And basically we are going to understand what do you mean by the rule of law and how it is better than the rule of man. Is that clear? So let us start. Rule of law is better than rule of man. Aristotle. Question asked in 1995 UPSC Civil Services or IS exam. So let us start its answer. So Aristotle was categorically rightly constituted. Law was the final authority. Aristotle was categorically stated that a rightly constituted law was the final authority and that personal authority was only desirable for some reason. It was not easy to codify laws to meet all general contingencies. Aristotle's ideals was constitutionally based order, and laws were less arbitrary and fairer, since these were impersonal as compared to rule by a person. According to A.B. Dicey, a British jurist, described concept of rule of law. So Dicey described rule of law on the basis of 3 points. The first one is absence of arbitrary power, and no man can punish except for a breach of law. The second point is equality before law, and the third is primacy of the rights of individual. Then rule of man, like the monarch, king order is law. No one above king. His order is supreme, and governance of their state done on the wish of king. Not any prescribed rule book or the constitution. Here main is king and his order is rule. Tyranny occurs when absolute power is granted to a ruler. Aristotle wants to say that tyranny occurs when absolute power is granted to a ruler, and in a tyrannical government the ruler becomes corrupt and uses his power to further his own interest instead of working for common good. The rule of law is the principle that no one is exempt from the law, even those who are in a position of a power. Rule of law is that a people in a position of authority should exercise their power within a constraining framework of well-established public norms rather than in an arbitrary, ad hoc, or purely discriminatory manners on the basis of their own preferences or ideology. Our government should be accountable through law. And the rule of law is not just about government. It is also for the citizens, and citizens should respect and comply with the legal norms even when they disagree with them. Law is the same for everyone so that no one is above law. Rule of law is epitomized by a stable constitution that has been embedded for centuries in the policies of a country. Man may be a safer ruler than the written law, but not safer than the customary law. When the rule of law disappears, we are ruled by the whims of man. Further, Aristotle contended that a free political relationship was one where the subject did not totally surrender his judgment and responsibility for both the ruler and the ruled had a defined legal status. The authority that was wielded by a constitutional ruler over one's subject was different from that ones that the master wielded over his slave. Constitutional rule or the rule of law had three main elements. Number one, it was a rule in the general or the common interest of the populace, as compared to a rule by a faction or a tyrant, which was in the interest of a ruler, one or few. Now, point number second, it was a lawful. A government was carried on in accordance with general regulations and not by arbitrary decrees. Moreover, a government could not act on contrary to the constitution. Now, the constitutional government or the rule of law meant being subject rule by consent rather than by force. A constitution, rule of law, for the Aristotle was not only a basic law determining the structure of its government and allocation of powers between the different branches of government, but also reflected a way of life, but a rule of man which only determined the training, arbitrariness of government and distribution of power between friend and family. Or there is no basic law as such. Rule of law means rule by constitution. Aristotle stated every constitution has to contain three elements. Number one, deliberative. Number second, official or magisterial. And number third is judicial. And all of them were assigned a comprehensive area of powers to the deliberative branch of government, since it was a supreme. It controlled the magistrates and courts by controlling the laws that regulate their functions. Responsible for most unimportant decisions, foreign policy of wars and peace, making and breaking of alliances, making of laws, etc. But in country of rule of man, there is no such deliberative body. There is no such legislative body like the parliament in India, because here rule of a single one man and absolute kingship or kingdom. Aristotle regarded monarchy as a true form of government. For it was possible to have a virtuous person as a ruler who could be able to stand outside the law and be its a single guardian. However, he pointed out his public interest even in a monarchy was the best secured through a system of rules framed by legislature. He was generally skeptical of finding a virtuous person who could be a monarch. A model example like the United Kingdom, modern monarch with the powerful parliament, and the rule of men is like perverted forms of government, where concern, training, and defined as the arbitrary power of an individual responsible to none, governing all alike, whether equal or better, fruits or advantages not that of its subject, and therefore against their will, training degenerated into oligarchy with the interest of a few and the rich chippings the sole cover. Rule of law is in democracy and the rule by the poor and the majority. This was because the many, when they meet together, may very like be better than the few goods, if regarded not individually but collectively, just as a fist to do which many contribute, it is better than a dinner provided out of a single purse. Aristotle said it would be the best to allow the monarch to rule, but Aristotle was not sure whether to grant anybody the absolute right to rule. Aristotle defended the rule of law, for it provides stability and reason. It is the rule of law alone which hinders the rulers from turning themselves into a brass gangster, and the clearest way to show what the rule of law means to us in everyday life is to recall what has happened when there is no rule of law. The world no longer has a choice between force and law. If civilization is to survive, it must choose the rule of law. So these are the example answer or model answer in front of you. I provided both the statement, what do you understand by the rule of law and the rule of man. Is that clear? So that's all. If you're the first time on my channel, then like it, share it, as well as subscribe it. Also press the bell icon, and if there were any queries, comment, suggestion, advice, you may comment in the comment box. Thank you once again. Have a great day.